Welcome to HarmonyTALK, a podcast about dreamers and doers. We talk with people from all walks of life and hear them tell us about their dreams, how they fulfilled them, and the moment they knew there was no turning back. This podcast is sponsored by AM Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm your host, Todd Stephens. Dreamers and doers often recall pivotal moments in their lives that help shape their futures. Others recount the lasting impact of great mentors and family members that provided inspiration. Today, I'm joined by a guest for whom both experiences are true. Kim Stephens grew up in New Jersey and spent weekends and summers on the shores of Lake Wallenpaupack in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. She serves as chief visionary and broker at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Pocono Real Estate, her multi-generational family business. But she is defined by more than just transactions. Kim operates by a unique leadership philosophy she calls structure with a healthy dose of magic, leveraging her background as a certified life coach to refresh, uplift, and empower her team and the broader online community. She's a doer who puts her vision into action with her unique Commissions for a Cause program, which turns every sale into an act of charity. Kim certainly had her share of challenges along the path, and she courageously shares her stories and lessons learned in hopes of inspiring others to live a more fulfilling life. Kim Stephens, welcome to HarmonyTALK.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I should start off by saying we're not related.
No, we're not.
As I'm reading the intro, I'm Todd Stephens, and I'm introducing Kim Stephens, but no relation. But delighted to have you here nonetheless. Kim, I mentioned in the lead-in that your business philosophy is structure with a healthy dose of magic, and I'm sure that's interesting to people. Sounds like a dreamer's statement to me, and as you know, this podcast is about dreamers and doers. Would you describe what that means to you?
Yeah, that's interesting that you're dreamers and doers, because that's really kind of what the essence of what I think of the alchemy of structure and magic is. There's a certain amount of processes and structure and disciplines that I have in my life, or that I think most people need to just either be successful or lead a happy life. But we also want to leave room for that magical thing, that intuition, that special thing that can happen that is maybe unplanned. I love the idea of that. And I think that with that combination, the most fullest expression of what a company can be, what a person can be, comes to the surface.
Well, that's interesting. And I'm sure from an employee standpoint, that's engaging as well, because everyone likes structure at work to a certain degree. But at the same time, you need to leave room for some personalization, I imagine.
Yeah, I like that. Leaving room for that, just being present or in the present moment. I think of it as, maybe divine guidance or universal energy or highest potential, whatever you want to name it, to kind of come through. So I love the idea that you just said about leaving room for the magic to enter any situation.
Well, and the magic for you started some time ago. You grew up in New Jersey, as I mentioned, and as a young person, that magic, did it enter your life early? Did you have dreams and aspirations of doing what you're doing today, or were there other things in mind for your future at a young age?
I don't know how much I thought about that, but, my mom and dad, I come from an entrepreneurial family. So I don't know. I never really thought about working for a corporation or doing anything like that. It wasn't the example that was before me, although my one grandfather did work for Dun & Bradstreet. So he was actually a great influence on my life, but I kind of felt I was going to do my own thing somewhere along the line, just because my mom and dad were, entrepreneurs. So I think I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I guess the other thing that I would say is I just really believe in people following their own thing, whatever that is, their own passion, their own highest potential, their own purpose. And so maybe I didn't know what that was, but I have always had like an urge or a longing to follow whatever that was for me.
Well, that's interesting also because, following that urge or that wanting eventually led you to Pennsylvania. And I understand that was a place that you visited as a child, and you eventually chose to relocate to Pennsylvania permanently. Was that part of the magic in your life as far as, taking logical steps in the progress, so to speak?
Oh my gosh. I love that you just said that, because it does feel like magic to me. My grandmother grew up camping in the valley at Lake Wallenpaupack. She and her brother and sisters used to camp at Camp Onika on Fairview Lake, and they would come down to the valley before Lake Wallenpaupack was even here, and they would go see the farmers. And she always shared stories about getting a squirt of milk right from the cow. So She had been here long before the lake was here. And then my grandparents had a few different gumbo cottages on Lake Wallenpaupack. So as an infant, I've been coming to the lake. And honestly, those gumbo cottages, for those of your viewers or listeners that know what that is, it is magic. That's what going to the lake was for me. The warm wood and the stone fireplace and the screened porch and the smells of nature. I mean, that was magical for me.
I was just going to ask you, do you remember the smell of that cabin?
Oh my gosh, I can remember the smell from the fireplace and even this is going to sound weird, but maybe even like a little musty smell I have fond memories of that. It was just everything to me. And there was a little loft, the Gumbo cottages, they all had a loft and many of my homes have had lofts, but us kids loved sleeping up there and we would do little shows for the audience, my parents and their friends down below. Yeah, it was just a magical experience there. And our olfactory glands are very powerful. So those smells, they well up inside of us and bring back beautiful memories for me.
I'm thinking of it now because I have similar experiences, so I certainly understand what you're saying. The anticipation of coming up to the lake or whatever your family would call it, taking that trip. Can you remember the excitement that brought?
Oh my gosh, yes. Going up to the lake. Yeah. I mean, we had a station wagon, of course, and back then you didn't really wear seatbelts, or we didn't. And,
Right.
we would lie in the back of the station wagon and we were going up to the lake. That was it. We're going up to the lake and driving on 206. And there was a place called Tail of the Pup that we used to stop at, and they had the curly fries. And it was a whole magical experience just coming up to the lake and then opening the door and walking in. Yeah, I have very fond memories of that.
For those of you who are listening who may not remember, we had a station wagon where the seat in the back actually faced backwards. That was unique as well, if you remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, your time at the lake obviously began at a young age, and your entrepreneurial family, as you mentioned, certainly had an impact on what you eventually did. Were some of those folks mentors to you as you were growing up? Who really impacted your life and kind of created a path for you to follow?
So my mom started a business with a friend of hers. So, that entrepreneurial thing, I admired my mom. It's funny because people have asked, did I miss, my mom wasn't a baking cookies and home after school kind of mom, but I didn't miss that. I just always looked up to her and admired what she did and I guess wanted to be like her. So of course my mom. But in thinking about it, my two grandfathers and my dad, the men in my life really had a big impact on me. My one grandfather, the one who owned the lake homes up here, he was an executive with Dun and Bradstreet. His stature was as tall as his character. He was 6'5". He played football for Sinus College, and he taught me about character, about ethics, about treating everyone well. They had a few bucks and he was a pretty high-powered executive, and I just remember him just treating everyone with care and respect, and he instilled that in me. His ethics were second to none. When they retired him, they said that they could never give anyone else that much power because he had more power than they would allow someone else to have. That was always something that I remember, that they hired two people in that position because he was just known for his ethics. So big impact on me for sure. And then my paternal grandfather, so my great grandfather was an opera singer. He sang with Caruso and La Scala in Italy. And my grandfather was a musician. He was a sculptor. He was a painter. He was an artist. He was a piano tuner by trade. I would say my grandfather's actually epitomized the structure and magic. So he was the little magical side. He taught me an appreciation for the arts and things like how to love a bagel with cream cheese and lox and how to use chopsticks and how to play chess. And we played music together. So I would say that my two grandfathers had a big impact on me.
Well, eventually you make your way into the real estate business, and the impact of your grandfathers, obviously, along with your other family members, do you incorporate that into your leadership style today?
Oh, no question. Yeah. I mean, I think actually, as I'm saying it, the structure and magic is my grandfather's. So yes, absolutely. It is my leadership philosophy. I do bring it into my business. And How I lead and how I try to, I guess, empower people. I guess because I want it for myself, right? I want to live the highest, best version of myself. And so I want other people to have that too. And so, yes, I do bring those two things into, I hope, every interaction that I have with anybody, you included. But yes, I do bring those into my work.
Well, the real estate market can be tricky, and I know there's so much cyclicality through the years. You've certainly been in it for a while. How do you handle those swings? And you talk about, making sure you're living your life to the fullest. How do you make sure that those times don't really drag you down?
Sometimes they do drag you down, but it's about not staying down. I've had my share of hard times and, financial distress and health problems. I've had them. I don't think it's a matter of not getting down, but not staying down. And listen, you get experience by having experiences. Really. And, listen, my faith is a big thing for me. I have this sense that I gained, I didn't always have it, that all is well and everything will be okay. And, I have had other mentors and leaders who have kind of shown me the way as far as how to navigate storms in, I don't know if the word is honorable, but in the best way. Listen, sometimes we do get knocked down, but not staying down and not wallowing and all of those things. I think that's what it is. Learning how to get back up and how to follow your own North Star. That's a big thing for me, is trying to find the way that's right for me in navigating whatever storms may come my way.
You mentioned some of your content to that point. There are some changes in your life, which you just referenced as well, that really forced you to look inward. What caused you to take that approach?
Yeah, what caused me to take that approach? My back was against the wall. Desperation.
Well, sometimes that's what it takes, right?
Maybe that's what it is. But really, listen, in 2007, talking about the cyclical nature of this business, the economy just in general, life, in 2007, the real estate market was in a shambles. There was the whole banking debacle, and we had a big firm here. We had, I think at the time, 13 offices and 165 agents throughout the Poconos. When that happened, it really put me in financial distress. I mean, personally, my marriage was in distress. My kids were having trouble. I had commercial real estate in foreclosure at the time. I'm a real estate broker, and some of my commercial real estate was in foreclosure. It didn't get foreclosed on. But on top of that, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. So I talk often about the hero's journey. I love that. Joseph Campbell says that all stories are really a hero's journey. And I feel like most people have their own hero's journey. Everybody's got their things, and that was mine. It was a point in my life where I didn't know what else to do. I kind of surrendered. And, in that surrender, oftentimes I've found comes hope. When you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. All of a sudden, this surge of hope, or God, or the universe, or call it what you will, comes forth. And I think I was really living my life in a way that was trying to make everybody else happy and making sure everybody else was okay and doing things the way I thought everybody else wanted me to do them. I remember when I got that stage 3 cancer diagnosis, I remember hearing clearly, Kim, save your own life. And that was really a turning point for me. I had to save my own life. Surgery and chemo and radiation and all the things. It changed my trajectory, and it changed how I had to live my life and taking care of myself. You've heard before, put your own oxygen mask on first. I was never that girl, but I turned into that girl.
Wow. And it's an amazing story. First of all, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like that was a very tumultuous time for you. If you don't mind me asking, what are some of the steps you took when you said you're going to change your life and focus on yourself? I know you mentioned you're an active yoga participant, meditation. Are those some of the things that you began to investigate to help find yourself in this time of trouble, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did all the things. I joined a cancer wellness program at the JCC in Scranton. They introduced me to a lot there. Self-care was a big part of, with all cancer patients. I was going through chemo, I'm bald and all the things, but I did start to take yoga. I started to understand about self-care. I was exercising, doing other kind of exercises, and I learned about energy work, about Reiki. I learned about getting massages and that kind of thing. So that was like kind of one trajectory. I did start going to therapy. I just kind of like, why is this happening? What's going on with me? Like, I really believe in trying to get to the core of those things. I had things. I don't know if everybody does, but I did. So I did therapy. I joined some spiritual groups that were very helpful to me to kind of find a spiritual basis of living my life and really kind of get on a trajectory of really awakening, being more conscious and living a more conscious life. So those are some of the things that I did.
That's great work and not easy work. I'm sure if you're used to living your life for a certain period of time one way, change is never easy, right?
No, but it wasn't easy doing it the other way either. It got kind of hard. So comparatively, it was a lot of work. To your point, I know what you're saying. It was a lot of work, but there was a rightness to it and it was worth it.
I just know that breaking old habits is a difficult process, but I also know I'm blessed to be able to talk to a lot of successful people, and they find things like therapy, meditation commonplace in folks who have been through a lot of challenges, and having the courage to go ahead and say, yes, I'm going to try this is a big step. So I congratulate you on that. Did you have opportunities to bring these practices back to other people, family members? Have you helped other people to start fulfilling their lives in similar ways?
Yeah, I've always had this feeling of being an example or modeling the behavior. Like that just is a thing for me. I guess it's like walk the walk, really. I don't ever feel like I could ever make a suggestion to anybody or give anyone advice if I wasn't taking it myself. So I really believe strongly in that. And so I also believe in, I think even with our kids, this is a great example. If you're telling your kids not to smoke, but you're smoking, they watch what we do, right? They don't listen to what we say. And so I think that's just a philosophy for me is to try to model or try to be it, try to walk the walk. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And for me, looking at others, there's a lot of power in me watching somebody live in a certain way. I mean, let's look at my grandfathers as examples, how they lived their life. Certainly they taught me things, but I think they taught me more by their example. And I would say that's mostly what I try to do. I try to walk the walk and be a good example and model the behaviors or the lessons that I've learned. I try to model that.
You're an avid reader. I did see that. As someone who doesn't make time for reading, I want to say thank you for reading so I don't have to. I do enjoy reading when I can, but I noticed a lot of philosophies that come through your readings and things that you post. What are a couple of your key philosophies to life? I know you mentioned a couple of them briefly, but I know you have a couple of kind of key guiding lights, if you will, or North Stars.
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned, I guess this is maybe like living kind of consciously or awakened one is that everything's happening for me. This actually kind of goes back to a previous questions of how do you navigate the storms? My whole life is an example of this, that everything is happening for me, not to me. It's such an important way to look at life for me because, listen, I don't always see it. Sometimes things just get hard. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is with this happening? But when I remember that it's happening for me, actually it starts to help me focus on the miracles and I start looking for how this is happening for me. I often call it divine discomfort because if I'm to look back 2020 vision, all the things that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going down, or those were all things that I learned from, or I became somebody like a higher version of myself because for having done that or having weathered that storm. So I have every experience in the world to tell me that things are happening for me. And I remember that and it helps me to look for the miracles. I love Albert Einstein and he says this, one of my favorite quotes is, there's only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. And so it's kind of like having lenses on that I look at life, that everything is a miracle. Doesn't always feel like that at first, but with that lens, I start to find the miracles in everything. And some of those are that I level up and become a different person. So that's a big one for me is it's happening for me, not to me.
Well, that's very inspirational. And I think that some of the other things I've seen you mention or post in the past also is, what's in the way is the way.
Same thing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I've put some thought into that, believe me. You think about your struggles and your problems, and what's in the way is the way. And how does that open an opportunity for you? And also, pain is caused by wrong thinking, I think was another key piece I took away.
Oh, God, that's a good one, right?
Yes, it's a good one. And it kind of took me back to something else that you posted, which I know is personal. And I just say, if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. But, an experience you had with your dad where he had taken ill and had looked at life one way. And through your conversation, you were able to kind of open up a new lens for him.
Yeah. So my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a couple years ago, and we were at my brother's house, a bunch of us. I had flown down to Florida to be with him. Everybody was going to church that morning, and I just kind of knew in my mind, that I was going to do whatever my dad did. If he went to church, I would go to church. If he stayed home, which really that would be his MO, does not go to church, but that I would stay with him. And I did. And I had one of the most extraordinary conversations of my life. And it started with him saying, Kim, I think I have an expiration date. I laughed and I said, Pop, we all have an expiration date. And he said, yeah, but I think mine's coming up soon. And really the conversation kind of stemmed around him just trying to reconcile his life. And if it was going to end, was he a good person? And he was struggling with the idea of sin and God and all the things. We had this beautiful conversation where I kind of shared my philosophy that I had learned and that, here's the truth of it. I do believe that we are so much more powerful than we realize, and the universe is very powerful, and that we are very creative, and that we really create much of our experience. And so the philosophy that I learned was that kind of like deciding what I want God to be. And that belief actually makes it so. And so I just gave him a perspective to create his own personal idea of what God is or what a higher power is. And that it didn't need to make sense to anybody else. And he could take what he liked from religion and leave the rest, but that he could create what that meant for him. And by virtue of doing so, it would be so. He just loved that. I checked in with him a couple of days later. He said to me, you've completely changed my mind. I have the actual text that he sent me, but he said, I feel refreshed, uplifted, and empowered in a way, and simultaneously is what he said. You've changed my mind. You've changed it how I look at things. You have no idea, Kim, how important this is to me.
What an amazing gift to be able to return to your father.
Yeah. And, that has become my mission statement for my life is I offer unique perspectives to refresh, uplift, and empower the individual spirit based on that conversation and what he said that I gave to him and what he wanted me to give to others.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I would like to ask, you have shared some of this with others, online. And what inspires you to give back in that way?
I guess I feel like I have to, or people have been so generous with me. People are just amazing. And I've learned so much from people. I was a seeker, like I'm taking personal growth workshops and spiritual retreats and doing all those things. And there's so many beautiful people that have just shared what they learned with me and helped me find a new way to look at things or do things or a new way to live. It almost feels like what I'm supposed to do, really. If I'm to be honest, if I'm aligned with God or aligned with my own North Star, it just feels like what I'm supposed to be doing. And then when I get feedback that I have changed someone's perspective, my dad obviously being like the main person initially, it helps me know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
What a blessing, not only to yourself, but to others as well. It's so personal. It's motivating as a listener, I can tell you that, and it's appreciated. And I wanted to ask you also, not to switch back to business, but I think about your giving, but commissions for a cause. This is something I hadn't heard of before until I looked into you. You donate 1% of your gross commissions back to a charity of the client's choosing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
I see you get excited about that when I mention it.
Oh, I get so excited about that. Listen, we try to give back, right? As just human beings, try to give back. And of course, as a business, giving back to charities that are important. But this just makes it so much more personal that I'm not just giving to a charity that is important to me, but that is important to our clients. And so when we have our closing, we ask our clients to fill out the charity that they would like the donation made to and on their behalf. And gosh, you wouldn't believe what you get to know about people. And listen, in a real estate transaction, these are important life altering transactions for people. We get very close with our clients and it is relational, not, transactional for us. But so when they share, why, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful thing. And it makes giving back mean so much more and so much bigger when we do it on the client's behalf for a charity that means something to them. It's not all about us. It's about them.
Is that some of the magic?
Yeah, it is some of the magic. Oh my gosh, when I sign a check or when I read that, oh, my son was autistic. So we wanted to give to the autistic, or St. Jude's is a big one, children and animals, Destin Animal Shelter, and some of our local VIP people who have had to, use those services. I get very excited. I have actually goosebumps all over me right now, just thinking about how happy it makes me to do that.
Isn't it a gift to be able to give?
It is because listen, there was a time when I really couldn't give, I needed, I needed to be the recipient of giving, whether that's just generosity of spirit or money or whatever. So to be in a position to come full circle and be in a position to give is a beautiful gift.
I heard once that you jumped out of an airplane, you went skydiving, and the lesson you learned was how to calm yourself before a pretty scary upcoming event. How did you come to that place of calm?
It just happened. Here's what I really have come to believe about that. I, of course, was nervous about doing it, but the higher I got in the plane as we're reaching 10,000 feet, this calmness came over me. You know what I really believe it is? I think it was presence. I really wasn't thinking about anything else at that moment. I wasn't worried about the past. I wasn't really thinking about the future. I was just present. And this wave of calm, surrender, God just washed over me. I don't know that I've ever been that calm or present in my whole life as I was jumping out of a plane.
That's a wonderful story. And finding that calm, I think, is something that we all need to learn more about. And if it's presence that does it, far be it better than jumping out of an airplane. I tell you.
Yeah, it wasn't like an example of trying to take that experience actually and bring it into the everyday. That was an extraordinary experience, but bringing that into the everyday and trying to maintain presence where I believe universal wisdom and potential and peace and calm is, that's the little nugget, is to bring that into the everyday.
Well, Kim, you've been successful in your business pursuits. You're a survivor. We learned today, a trainer, a speaker. Where do you go from here? What's next for you?
That's a great question. A little bit of more of the same. I love helping agents succeed. I don't think that what we do has as much respect as it should, the way we impact people's lives. I mean, home is everything, and navigating a very high dollar emotional transaction is not for the faint of heart. So I love helping agents to do that, and I think I have a great platform here and a great environment to help agents succeed and, not just in doing that, but building their own wealth and their own sense of home. So more of that, of course, helping clients navigate that process as well. But as far as the other side, the life coachy side, I think I'm going to start to offer maybe some classes or workshops or something like that. I just had a meeting and people ask me all the time, oh, where can I get more of that? So I think that might be what's next, maybe do a live Zoom session and see what people want, or maybe offer workshops or online courses or something like that.
So more of giving back from Kim Stephens
Yes.
yet to
Well,
come.
yeah.
That's awesome. And where can people find you? Social media, I assume?
Oh, yeah. Social media, all the things, Instagram and Facebook, Kim G. Stephens. Of course, LinkedIn, TikTok. I think they're all Kim G. Stephens. And then my personal website is kimgstephens.com. And then for my business, PoconoRealEstate.com.
Terrific. Well, Kim, congratulations on your successes, and thank you for sharing your very personal story of dreaming and doing with us today.
Oh, God, it's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you, Todd.
And to those of you listening and watching, we've been talking with Kim Stephens, Chief Visionary, Broker, Yogi, Life Coach, and much more. You can see more of Kim's inspiring content on social media and learn more about her business ventures at PoconoRealEstate.com. We thank the Stourbridge Project for hosting our podcast today, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of HarmonyTALK Podcast, presented by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm Todd Stephens. For everyone out there, keep dreaming and doing.